All right, so the countdown continues of the movies that I find disappointing, and again, these are movies that I personally have found to be disappointing. Not that everybody necessarily has. It's so strange opinion and all. Number 30, and this one the bar was set kind of low. Um, Superman's 1 and 2 are fantastic movies. The ending of Superman 1, the way that they magically fix everything, is kind of dumb. Superman 2 is a perfect movie. And then Superman 3 with Richard Pryor, that was a mistake. But the thought process was maybe they'll get back onto a more serious storyline with part 4, and they didn't. And it's some of the worst fight scenes in history. It's some of the worst acting, directing, however you want to put it. It's some of the worst of it that I've ever seen. Superman 4 is absolutely a disaster, and it killed it. It killed it. But it still is not the most disappointing Superman movie. Nope, it's not. It's just not. Number 29. Kill Bill Volume 2. So why Kill Bill Volume 2? Because Kill Bill Volume 1 is fantastic. Volume 1 pays homage to all of the Japanese samurai movies you've ever seen, and it pays homage to pretty much everything. Now, this is probably going to be a controversial one because there's people that probably really, really enjoy Kill Bill Volume 2. It just feels like Volume 1 was building to something awesome, and then Part 2, it just sort of, it just doesn't happen. It just stops. And the actual fight she has with Bill at the very end of the movie is anticlimactic. Um, Not that the five finger heart punch isn't fun in the way that it's executed in its description, but it is just sort of anticlimactic, and I don't know. I think Kill Bill Volume 2 being as disappointing for me as it was prevents me from watching Volume 1 a whole lot, because of course you can't watch Volume 1 to the end and then go, well, that's it, because you still need to see how it ends. So Volume 2 is just a disappointment. I remember feeling that way right from the start too. Number 28. There's two R's in there, aren't there? Yeah. Anyways, whether it's two R's or one, doesn't matter. Forrest Gump was wow. I remember when it came out and there was all the Oscar buzz and everybody's, oh, what a great, fantastic movie. And then I watched it and I'm like, so they took Tom Hanks and they sort of CGI'd him into all these historical moments, and he's just there. And there's some funny moments in the movie and some touching kind of moments in the movie, but it's really, to me, it's just sort of bland. I don't have a whole lot of interest in Forrest Gump the character, or the shrimp company, or how many different ways there are to do shrimp, or I don't know. I think part of what it was, and I've complained about this before, Forrest Gump was one of the first movies I saw that I watched the trailer for and I went, okay. And I knew exactly what was going to happen throughout the movie because the trailer told me pretty much everything, and I was right. For the most part, I was right. The storyline was very straightforward, very formulaic, and it was formulaic as a Hollywood sort of drama. It just I was never surprised by anything in it. It just sort of, I never bought the whole Jenny thing either. I don't know it. And again, that's me, and maybe I'm over explaining, but uh, it's one of those movies that I there's no way I could sit through it again. I barely got through it the first time, and it's there's no way I could do it again. Number 27. Um, Coming out of Braveheart, I'm sure that Mel Gibson thought that, okay, so we did this for the Scots. Now we got to do something for the English, or for the Americans, and the Patriot was created. Horrible, really horrible. So, um, and I know there's people who are gonna probably not even remember this movie, not have heard of it. The other one I could have put in this and I didn't, was after Braveheart and they tried to do more of the historical stuff. Rob Roy, which Liam Neeson and all that, and you'd think it'd be really good. And I thought, okay, cool, this is gonna be great, and it just wasn't. And the Patriots in that category too. Just I don't know. There's so many potential options they could have gone with, and it just I don't know. It just didn't work for me. Number 26. We're gonna go back to DC for this one. I don't know what it is with DC. Superman Returns. So they decided decades after Superman 4 that they're going to do Superman Returns. They cast Brandon Routh as Superman, and I like him as Superman. That's the funny thing. I like Brandon Routh. I think he's a good actor. I don't have a problem with him at all. He's in Legends of Tomorrow, which is a good show, and he plays a good role in that. I like him, but I couldn't stand or Superman Returns. I think the casting for it was just completely off. They got Lex Luthor wrong. They got Lois Lane completely wrong. The whole kid storyline was weird. Everything in it was just bad. And when Kevin Spacey's bad in a movie, that's stunning, because Kevin Spacey is one of those actors who's usually really fantastic, and in this movie he was not. All right. And I don't think I'm going to get any argument on Superman Returns. I think we can all agree that it was just a bad idea and a bad movie. Number 25. This qualifies as movies that shouldn't be made. And it started us down the road of various sequels. I want to say sequels, even though Crow City of Angels wasn't a sequel. City of Angels. Now, the original Crow movie has subject matter that's tough to see, tough to watch, and there's times where while you're watching, you're like, "Man, this is brutal," and you're uncomfortable. City of Angels takes that and cranks it up to 40. I love the soundtrack to the Crow City of Angels, though. The soundtrack is just awesome. I could recommend the soundtrack. For weeks. You could listen to the soundtrack and not get bored of it. But the movie itself is really... I get it. Brandon Lee passed away, so you can't do a Crow sequel with him. But you couldn't do a Crow sequel anyways. The Crow is this wonderful, fantastic thing that should have been left alone. And they just had to make sequels. Hollywood just can't... They can't abide making money and not risk throwing it all away on a crappy sequel. Number 24. I'm not going to get a lot of arguments on this one either. Because I know a lot of people were upset when this one came out. X-Men Last Stand, or X-Men 3, however you want to look at it. Last Stand was a mistake. Every part of it was a mistake. Whether it's the direction, some of the casting calls, some of the cringeworthy dialogue that takes place towards the end. You know the Juggernaut line? Yeah, it was cringeworthy to have that in the movie. And it's too bad, because it wastes some solid actors. It wastes Hugh Jackman again. The Wolverine origin movies also did that. And X-Men Last Stand is just... There's too much going on in the final battle. The battle at the end, there's so much going on. It's sort of like Transformers again, where you're like, okay, what's happening here? Now what? And there's so many quick cuts during the fight that it's hard to track any one fight that's going on. It's just a disaster. And this happens a lot with comic movies, and it makes me nervous with the Avengers. You end up throwing too many characters into a scene, and you just can't follow it. And then you're not emotionally involved or emotionally invested, because it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Speaking of things that don't work, and I had to double check the title of this. It is Matrix Revolutions. I always want to put Matrix Revelations, because of course there's the really obvious correlation between Neo and his sacrifice and Jesus. There are so many obvious weavings in this movie where it's like, really, they're making him their savior. Oh, this is dumb. And what bothered me with the Matrix, so the first Matrix movie I watched, and I went, okay, it'll be interesting to see how they defeat the Matrix and mankind is freed from this horrible system. And then they weren't. And then it's over, and you're like, oh, okay, All right, so it comes down to just a stupid fight, a stupid gun battle, and 1.5 million Smiths against Neo, and none of it matters. Starting with Matrix Reloaded, Neo is invulnerable. He doesn't feel pain, and none of it matters. Now, Matrix Reloaded isn't on this list because I don't mind Reloaded. I can handle it, but Revolutions I can't. It's just so awful. I own it because I own the first two. You might as well own the third, as bad as the third is. But Matrix Revolutions is so bad because all of that promise that the original Matrix showed, and they just throw it away. And they throw it away in a movie that's just really just so awful, and it's a crying shame. Number 22, a sequel that really shouldn't have been made, and I know this is according to the way that some people are responding to my actors I stay away from list. They're not going to like Anchorman 2 being on here. Anchorman, the original, pretty funny movie. There are lines in it where I laugh pretty hard, and I find it pretty funny. And Steve Carell's funny in it, Paul Rudd's funny in it, and Will Ferrell is funny in it, and Christina Applegate is hilarious in parts. And I didn't know she could be that funny. I thought after Married with Children that all of her funny was gone, because she's been in comedy since they weren't particularly funny. Anchorman, the first one, is pretty funny. This one is not. It's just not. And it took me, I think, 2 or 3 different sittings to get through the movie, so I watched like maybe a third of it, like, ugh. And then I started where I left off to try to get, and it's just, it's so horrible. And it is, again, an example of Hollywood hates making money because then they got to spend it again. That's like, well, we've got to risk losing it on a sequel. We can't just make money on a movie. That's not how this works. We've got to make a sequel, even when it didn't need it. You don't need Anchorman 2, and it's just, it's virtually unwatchable. No, it's unwatchable. 21. This one really ticked me off. I went to see this one in the theater. And I went to see it in the theater because the opening scene, the opening chase scene in Jeepers Creepers is genuinely terrifying. Jeepers Creepers is a horror movie that starts out as genuinely terrifying, and by the end of the movie, you're laughing at it. I was. And I know there's people who like Jeepers Creepers. That's why they made, as far as I know, 2 sequels. I have never actually gone looking for others. About halfway through the movie, I believe I said out loud in the theater, come on. Like, it just gets so dumb. And the motivation of the villain in the movie is so weird. And it's kind of stupid. And it just doesn't hold up. It's not, and it's too bad because the original chase, the initial chase that started the movie is so good. It's so fantastic, and then the rest of the movie happens. Jeepers Creepers is one of those things that if you watch the first 5 or 10 minutes, you think, wow, that must be a really good movie. The other 85 minutes show you that it's not, and that's again my opinion. That's my next 10. You guys can let me know what you think in the comment section below, as I'm sure that you will. But this is 30 through 21 of my most disappointing movies I've watched. Again, because I enjoyed originals, or maybe I expected something more than what I got. But that's my opinion. Thank you very much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and I'll talk to you again soon.